Welcome back to Beyond the Pump, where today we're going to break down ROAS. We're going to be talking about your marketing spend, when you should go spend more, when you should probably take a step back and spend a little bit less, or maybe fix some problems there, how to know where you're at, and everything in between. A couple of fun stories in the middle too, and I might share my new collection that I have going on. So stay tuned and we'll see you guys here. I think back about my history, and I opened my first gym in 2009. And Steve in 2009 versus Steve in 2026, obviously all of us 17 years later, very different people. When I think about literally the marketing mindset I had back then versus today, it's almost polar opposites, right? Like just almost 180-degree difference. And I'm getting thrust into this Steve from 2009 world now with Steve from 2026 knowledge, which is just ridiculously eye-opening. A client that I have, Todd Durkin. I don't know, you might know him or whatever, but he's old school brick and mortar trainer guy. He's trained some NFL stars and things, but I remember listening to him at like one of our national conferences, even at Fitness Together, and just how much I was like, man, this guy's so cool, and he's get your mind right, and just super motivator guy, but like also good dude, like genuinely a good human, not just a rah kind of guy. So I'm getting to coach him now. It's this fun full circle moment of like, I used to look up to you, but now I get to help you, which is kind of cool. And he's opening a gym, and we're going through the process of like, all right, should we or should we not spend more money on advertising? Now, first of all, and it's funny because we were just talking about this before we started recording, the level of tracking that happens in these brick and mortar businesses is absolutely atrocious. Just terrible. Another client that we both had the pleasure to work with, tracking, terrible, just terrible tracking. Like we have no idea where money is going when it comes to advertising. And it's wild that we could spend tens of thousands of dollars without knowing and understanding in depth what's going on. So, we're going through, we're opening his gym, and he's spending, I'll just use different numbers for sanctity of client privilege here. But let's say he's just spending $5,000 a month in marketing. And for him, the number he is actually spending is just like, man, that's a lot of money. And it's, an ad spend and oh my God, but it's like, how much you spending on equipment? Oh, I spent like $60,000. No problem. Literally no problem to spend $60,000. But ad spend at $5,000 is like a lot of money. And we're going through and we're almost at opening. In all, we've spent, let's say $15,000. Okay. For 3 months of ad spend. So he's spent, we'll use $15,000 as the number. He's like, yeah, we got to tone that back. Like we can't keep spending $5,000 a month. Like that's just too much money. So we're chatting. I'm like, well, how much money has that $15,000 gotten you? Well, I don't know. I'm like, okay. Well, we should probably know that so we know how to make decisions on what to do, right? Like, here's your effort in. What's my output, right? Like, that's like, what do you're always saying, the minimum effective dose. You do some work, and what do you get on the other side of doing that work? Mm-hmm. So we did some math, and now, granted, he's not open yet, so there's no absolutes here. Mm. But he's generated, let's say, for context of this conversation, 35 clients that have signed up for his month-to-month gym. So $15,000 to get 35 people. And he is like, we got to tone this back. We can't keep spending this money. Like, this is gosh awful. Like, all right. We don't know what attrition is yet. No idea because they're not open. But let's just assume real quick, 20%, which is terrible attrition for a boutique gym. Like terrible, right? Let's assume 20%. That means everybody stays for 5 months. So 35 people times 5 is 175 months worth of payments times $250 a month. Means that he'll generate $44,000 on his $15,000 of ad spend. So my question for you, Andrew, for simple math, if every time you gave me $1, I handed you $3 back, would you take that deal?
How many dollars do I have to give you up front?
You could give me $1 and I'll give you $3 back.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Then I gave you 3 back. How many are you going to give me?
Until I get to 100, I'll probably give you all the dollars.
So you're going to now you're going to give me 3 more dollars and I'm going to give you 9 back.
Yeah.
And then with the 9, how many are you going to give me?
Just keep giving you back until I get to 100 and then I'll start taking profit.
Got it. So now you give me 9, I give you 27, you give me 27, I give you 81, you then give me 81, and then now I give you 243, and you're going to skim some money off the top and keep it and then give me more money back.
Yep.
And then you're just going to keep giving me $100 at a time, let's say.
Yeah.
So I give you 300, you give me 100.
Until I can handle more of the output. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, you give me $100, I give you 300, you keep 200, you give me 100 back, and we just keep playing that same game. That's literally marketing expense. Mm-hmm. Like if I put money in, I get money out. If I put money in and get enough money out, it's a good investment. If I put money in and don't get enough money coming out, it's a bad investment. Like it's simple math and we have to pay attention. But literally speaking, the amount of people that don't know this it drives me nuts because I think, which is here's my problem, I'm fully going to say it. It's an expectation that you should just know that. And it's simple. It's not simple on any level. I get it. But if you're marketing, if you have to grow a business, I need you to know that this math is simple. If you can, generally speaking, get a 3 times return on the amount of money you put in, that's scale territory. That's like, hey, go for it. So that's the thing that's been coming up lately for me. I need people to know. What questions you got?
There's a lot of different levers that
there is
stick out inside of that. I think initially it kind of comes down to, financial responsibility and building on a foundation of that. And you can't scale what's not stable. And then increasing scale increases, instability, and there needs to be a point of consolidation. But, when it comes to figuring out, are you in a growth phase or if you're in a maintenance phase, like kind of, are you acquiring, are you maintaining? Are you scaling, you stabilizing? And for people that have a baseline business, the question becomes, when does ROAS become a relevant metric or variable for them to start to pay attention to?
The moment you are spending any amount of money on marketing efforts, you need to consider what your actual return on your investments are. Now, and this is actually a really good question. ROAS is very specifically, here's the money I placed on my ad spend, very specifically, return on ad spend. So if I go on to Facebook, whatever medium that I'm going, Facebook and Instagram tend to be the most common. If you put $1 in, you want to try to get at least $3 out. That's your generally speaking math. Now, that's also a naive statement because I don't know the inner workings of your business. I don't know your margins. Like there is some naivety there. But if you're at 1 to 3-ish, that's a good spot to start. We're not going to go into the details. When we think about marketing holistically, there are other things. So your softwares, your time, your payroll that you might pay people to help with the thing, the fee you're paying the agency to do the work, the money you might give to your setter on there, your social media manager, like any of those things, you do want to get some form of marketing investment return on it. So let's say you're spending, all marketing efforts, the softwares, the ad spend, the people, the things, the social media, the video editors, the VAs, the whatevers is $3,000. Well, hey, you need to go out and you need to sell at least $9,000 worth of services to get the appropriate return back on those efforts is the problem.
Yeah, and there's probably a handful of I'd say probably the majority of people that this podcast is reaching. For our several recurring subscribers, thank you for being here. Make sure you give it a thumbs up so that we know that we are loved and this is good content for you, or just give it a thumbs down. That also helps. If you do that, we'll find you though. When you mention things like setters, you mention a lot of more sophisticated business variables. I think, again, it comes down to who is this conversation for? What point does this become a relevant conversation? Are these people usually going to have a staff? Are they having a team? Is this where they maybe go from the 10 to 20 client mark? Like, what are some of the inclusion criteria for people that need to pay attention to this? And then, I think we should probably shift gears and get in a little more of the tactical, like how do we walk it from a 0.5 ROAS to a 3.0, or what are some best practices around that?
Yeah, I would say like the goal here is to understand you need to get a return. If you don't know what a setter is and you don't have a setter on your team, don't worry about it right now. But know that if you're spending money on anything that is intended to help provoke the opportunity to create a selling situation, you want to be able to get a return on that money. So if you're doing nothing there and like growing, cool, fine, whatever. But if you're paying $10 a month for your CapCut subscription to edit videos for Instagram to then post it to try to get new clients, you're putting time into it and you have $10 a month of an expense on CapCut. So it should, to some extent, be giving you a benefit other than just doing the work. If you're more sophisticated and you have all of the things I mentioned and then some, again, you want to get a return. So I think here it is relevant to anybody in any business. You want to know, like, whatever pertains to you. If you put it in the bucket of acquisition and there's an expense there, then you should be getting something out of that. And that's kind of the thing to know here, is kind of the way that I would say it.
Yeah. And I think it's important to clarify for our listeners that if you are just trying to establish your brand, you don't have really much of a brand reputation, or you have no proof of concept, marketing might be a funky thing at that time to mass produce and to really figure out how to get that in front of a lot of eyeballs. Because again, like, you don't know if the thing's going to work. You don't know if people like it, and to invest significant sums of money. And I say significant is probably somewhere north of 3 figures, right? If you're spending more than $100 and you don't have any clients, like, that might be considered a weird situation. And I think that you start to dig yourself a hole right out of the gate. So, once you have a couple clients, I think that that's where, how do you get in front of more clients is really the question that we're saying. And this ROAS metric is one of the ways that you can determine if it's a worthwhile venture, or if it's something that maybe you're not sophisticated or mature enough as a business owner or as a brand yet to really engage with. To give you a contrast, when you think about ROAS, there's opportunity cost of your time, right? And Alex Hormozy was like, obviously go to Chipotle. It's more effective than, making your own food. And I have some thoughts on that might be contrarian to that. But, if you don't want to put ads on Facebook and you don't want to grow your brand that way, that's completely fine. An alternative to that might be going and now having to pay for a sign, going and standing on a street corner and spinning the sign. That would also be another way to potentially get people to know about you and to potentially solicit enough brand awareness. And maybe one of the 500 cars that drives by in that hour might ask you for some details that you then might be able to have a conversation with. But I mean, effectively ads, my understanding of them is more like you're just spinning a street sign, but some of the more sophisticated algorithms that I don't understand are going to help put the street sign that you're spinning in front of the right people, or at least people that might be somewhat interested in it. And now you want to figure out, well, how much money do you need to spend? Do you need like a $5,000 sign to spin? Or can you just get away with, the minimum effective dose, which is, can you get away with like maybe like a cardboard Home Depot box? Like, I don't know. Honestly, that would cheaper and less quality does seem to be like the thing that is standing out, especially in the age of AI and fabrication, and people just want real shit. So, I think that we're going to start to see a little bit of an evolution in that. But just to provide some context and some alternatives, you don't have to spend ads, but you do want to see a return on your time. And if you're trying to, find a new client, if you're not getting at least one client spinning a sign every couple hours, like, I would say it's probably a bad investment of your time. So how do people split test this, or, figure out how to make it better?
It's common today to see people out there going, the best way to grow online is to put money into ads. Like, it's very common. And I mean, listen, I tend to agree. but it's almost it's the new fun clickbaity polarizing thing for the business gurus to put out there as well of, oh, I spend 200 grand on ads instead of buying a watch for 200 grand because the 200 grand will give me $600,000 of income where a watch is just a watch. And like, this guy, it's funny. I read this yesterday and
who the fuck is doing that, Steve? That's crazy.
It was somebody made a post about it. Well, and the thing is, I don't overly love this guy,
tone deaf,
but I appreciated the post, if you will, on Instagram, and it was literally a picture of his watch, and his watch is a $100 watch. So he said he went to some event, and a couple of people asked him where he got his watch from, and he's like, "Oh, I just whatever, it's just a watch," and this, and he basically talks about how it does the same thing as every other watch, and it tells me the time. And it does a good job at that. And then he kind of went on to basically talk about the fact about how he'd rather put money in ads than to be one of the guys that goes out to buy an expensive watch to try to show off a status symbol, because he'd rather his bank account speak about his status rather than a watch. And, and then he continues to go, and, oh, by the way, I'm never going to show you my bank account. I'm going to let all the success stories of my clients speak for themselves because I don't really give a shit what you think about me and all these things. So for somebody who I don't overly like in social media, I actually really appreciated the post, because you and I have known people who like, oh, look at my watch, and and it's so cool and all the things. Meanwhile, it's like cool and like, listen, I can appreciate a nice thing. I can, but I live a relatively inexpensive things life. Like, I'm not really down. Like, I don't want to spend money on dumb shit. And I consider watches one of those things that are dumb.
Everyone spends money on weird shit. Like, Steve has like 7 computers in his office and 4 screens and a 55-inch monitor. So, now there are people that will prioritize acquiring things that are useful versus aesthetically appealing. And I think that's an important call out, that when you think about investing money into your ability to generate more money, that's a wise investment. People that are buying, I knew a guy that bought a fucking $250,000 McLaren to sell it at a loss because he thought it was originally an investment. Like, fucking idiot. Okay. Like, you just let a car sit in your garage, you drove it around 2 or 3 times, and then you sold it when you needed some money and you lost money on it. Like, feels dumb, but it's value's always in the perception of the person that's being pitched. So that's why marketing is such an essential skill, because if you can create value or the perception of value around something, then, you increase your odds of getting more people to consume the consumable.
And here's the thing. There is, literally speaking, from a watch perspective or the car example, the idea that those are investments isn't necessarily wrong, so long as you actually treat them as investments and they're assets that you're buying to then sell in the future at a premium to get return on your money. And listen, if you enjoy the thing while it's earning you money, like, that's not a bad situation. Like, cool, good for you. But if you buy it and then sell it at a loss, like, hey, watches to me are not the thing I enjoy investing in. Frankly, I don't know anything about them other than they tell time. And nowadays they got ones that tell you how many steps you did, and if you forget to turn your notifications off, it also tells you when somebody texts and calls you. It's really fucking annoying when you're trying to concentrate. But like, I've recently gotten into collecting coins, and I'm like, all right, like, hey, I'm gonna really learn about this thing, and I want to understand it. And then all of a sudden, you're like, coins. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of information about a lot of different coins in the world. So then I start to dial it down, and it's like, all right, well, cool. I related to the watch thing. There's mechanisms, and there's timing, and there's craftsmanship, and there's materials, and there's all these things that matter in watch land. That is partially why I don't overly care. Just like there's all these things that matter in coin land. And in coins, it's like, oh, what's the grading, and what's this, and what's the material, and what year is it from, and where is it from, and do they make it anymore, and circulated amount, and all the stuff. And all of a sudden, I'm just like, I don't think I like the idea of coins. Like, that's a lot of shit. But then I was like, well, all right, what about coins can I get behind that is super easy for me to understand? I'm like, well, I can easily understand the value of silver in this case or gold. And oh, by the way, it happens to be in the shape of a coin. So if I can buy 1 ounce of silver at a good deal, whether this is a coin or simply an ounce of silver, I now have an easy barometer of investment here, and I get to look at this cool thing and get some enjoyment out of it. So like, I look at it and then you, again, all of a sudden it's like your algorithm knows you and all these things. And it's like the amount of different coin stuff that shows up on my feeds these days is insane. And I'm like, man, there's so much out there, which again, I think back to watches. Like, okay, cool. This guy doesn't care about the watch and whatever. And me, I'm not really like a watch guy either. Again, they tell time for me.
They're also a fast way to lose a marketing director. Do you know that?
That's true. But like I try to, of a watch being really valuable to me, there's one time a year a watch really matters. It's when I'm backpacking. Yeah. Because it helps me understand my distance traveled because it's got GPS on it. And it helps me understand the time of day so I know, am I where I need to be by a certain time? That is the only time a watch has very high intrinsic value to me. And I think at this point in time, it's like a 6 or 7 year old Polar watch is the one that I use. So it's not even the one like this one that I use every day in Samsung. It's just an older watch that has GPS on it. So it tells me how far I went and how long it's taking me. So it was just one of those posts that like, hey, I don't like the dude, but I appreciated the post. Mm-hmm. It made me think of somebody else like, oh, look at my watch and blah, blah, blah. And it's like status symbol, like cool GCFO, bro. Like who cares? But also at the same point in time, like, maybe watches are your thing and you think whatever, but like, that's cool too. This guy is thinking about the investment that he could therefore make in marketing, which gives him the proper return, bringing us back to the original point of this conversation. If you understand the number and you know, you get to kind of figure out where do you want to put your money. Yeah. I have another client. They're like, oh, we have a lot of debt to pay down. I'm like, all right, cool. You make more money putting more money into marketing right now. So how do we pay the minimum payments in your debt to make more money over here? Because we understand the number. Every time I get $1, if I get $10 back or $5, or I get charged $1.5 for every dollar I borrow, understanding those metrics is important. I don't want to make it confusing, but we want to understand what our return on that ads efforts, the ad spend, or your just acquisition cost as a whole is, so you can make informed decisions about your business.
Yeah. So if we like move beyond the conceptual stuff now, like how do people actually take ROAS and how do they like what are some ways and methods or tactics and strategies to improve their ROAS? You know, they do an ad set, they have no idea, they just put out like a, hey, I'm Andrew and I have an HR consulting company and that's it. And then they get the data back and they're like, fuck, I didn't make any money. What do they do then?
Well, so again, I want to say like return on advertising efforts here. Let's talk about it that way. Cause you brought up the sign that you could spin. You could put ads on Facebook. There's a lot of things you can do. If you go out and you buy a $5,000 course to teach you how to get more clients, I would consider that an investment you need to get your money back on. So to keep it a little bit broader, not specifically Facebook, you want to know how much money you're spending and you want to know how much money you're getting for spending that. So for you, what's the process that you follow? Do you collect leads in a home, whether it's Rise CRM, whether it's HubSpot or Salesforce or in a Google Sheet? Where do all of the contacts that you generate go to? First things first, you spend money and you get a certain amount of contact information, names, email, phone number, generally speaking. So your first thing you understand is what your cost per lead is, right? You could spend $10 and get 10 pieces of contact information. You could spend $10 and get 100 pieces, or you could stand outside and stand there for, and buy 5 strangers a cup of coffee and get 2 names. You're not sure, but at the end of the day, you're spending money and you're getting contact information. So then of that, you now go into how many of those pieces of information were you able to get into ultimately like sales opportunities? I'm going to skip the scheduling and the show rates and like all this stuff to not make it overly complicated here. But of the amount of people that you were able to contact, how many people showed up to some sales interaction? You spoke to them at the gym while they were walking on the treadmill, you were still in Starbucks, or they called you, you had a Zoom call with them, whatever it might be. How many got there? And then the last piece is how many people said, here's my money, solve my problem. So if we look at those stages, you're going to understand uniquely what your cost per lead, your cost per sales opportunity, and then your cost per acquisition actually were. And you look through those and it's like, all right, well, at the end of the day, if you got 2 people to show up and you got 2 new sales, can you improve that number? No. But if you got 5 people to show up and you got no sales, well, sure, you could improve that number. Same token, if you get 100 names, but you only get 1 person to show up to the sales opportunity, can you improve that number? If you have 1 person and then you got that 1 person to show up, can you improve it? No. So you need to use a little bit of like logic here of common sense, we'll say, of where can I get these numbers to, but also which one is the one I should focus on. If you're great at sales, but you're terrible at talking to new people, that's probably the muscle you need to flex, and you need to get your cost per lead down. But if you get a lot of sales calls and you close none of them, then you need to actually get your cost per close down because your conversion isn't great. And if you look through that and you understand what that funnel looks like, usually more leads, less closes, you should be able to uniquely see what area should I focus on, which one should I dial up or try to fix in order to get a better outcome. So you go out and you spend money and you get no leads, solve that problem. You go out and you get a lot of leads, but you get nobody to show up to a sales call, sales opportunity, solve that problem. You get a lot of people to come to a sales opportunity, but none of them buy anything from you. You need to solve that problem. If all of them are kind of happening, but not a lot, I would then ask you, which one do you think is the easiest to move in your favor and solve? That's the one you should focus on. And you just literally rinse and repeat that process, because you're going to be like, I got more sales opportunities booked, but then the amount of people that said yes went down. And it's like, all right, well, cool, that happens. Which one is better to focus on? So that way, at the end of it all, more people ultimately buy with you. And that's what you're chasing. How do you do incremental effort, go from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4 people buying from you without you necessarily having to put in more effort, time, and more money?
For people that might be swimming in some number soup and trying to struggle through some of the initial items here, it's do something general, get some general feedback, and then, you kind of just pick a direction. There is a right answer. You won't know what the right answer is or a better answer until you start doing something. Though you post a social media post and, some people are using that as a viable lead gen strategy. There's nothing wrong with that. You get in front of a lot of eyeballs, and if you have no views and no engagement, the idea shouldn't be for you to then put $100 behind it to try to get it to circulate. Like that would be a poor investment of potential return, because there was no proof of concept in the first place. So maybe you figure out your content strategy. What do people like? What do they not like? What are, whatever that looks like for you. And once you find it, there's a saying, once there's a fire, that's what is it? Pour gasoline where there's fire. Don't pour the gasoline on wet wood, because then it shit ain't usually going to go nowhere. And I heard that from a hillbilly one time. So, there's got to be some Southern truth to that. But it was West Virginia, and, it's not the song. So that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. I think the main goal here is understand your numbers and understand the money that you're spending to acquire consumers. That way you can make some informed decisions. If somebody's telling you to go spend more money on advertising in any medium out there, make sure there's a legitimate use case as to why. Don't just blindly spend it, but also understand if you're spending it and you're getting a good amount of money back, you should go and spend more, because that's how you grow your business. I used to struggle again, 17 years ago, me, to spend $1,500 to $2,000 a month in ad spend. Now I help manage budgets that are $2 to $3 million a year. I've been fortunate enough to be a part of a team to place a Super Bowl ad. Like, the more you spend, the more return you should get back, as long as you understand your numbers. So if you're in a good spot, keep spending and go spend more. If you're in a bad spot, fix the problem so you can then go spend more. And that's just like a roadblock for a lot of, oh, I don't want to spend the money. Like, no, if you're doing it wisely, that's how you grow something faster. And again, you're going to spend money or time. Whichever one is more disposable is the things that you need to be doing. But money usually allows you to get in front of more eyeballs than you would be able to without it. But you got to start somewhere. Usually it's using your time to get there. So know when it's time to scale it. Know when it's time to fix it. Like, simple and easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the only thing I'll add to that is, before you try to market something, make sure it doesn't suck.
Yeah. Don't do something dumb.
Or you just, spend more money to acquire more clients that you lose money on.
Yeah, that too.
You got to refund them.
We'll talk about that.
And then you lose transaction fees.
Yes.
On top of the refund.
So, all right, gang. We appreciate you listening in today to Beyond the Pump, where we break down the business of fitness and nutrition. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you think outside the box a little bit here. Again, if you're in a winning position, go do more of it. If you're in a losing position, go fix it so you're not stuck in that spot anymore. Like the episode, subscribe to the channel, throw us a comment if you want us to focus on something for you. And we'll see you guys next time.